Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lifting. This is one of our free YouTube episodes. And as always, we have our paid material on galacticinterstellarcouncil.com and eventually our soon-to-be revised thelifting.net as well. So this is going to be a very interesting episode. I will go into just a small portion, then I'll read the affirmation and blessing here. And Joanna will have to come up with one for the end because I don't have another one. So I actually made one for the beginning this time after a long time. This is going to be an episode that I have entitled From the Fall to the Lifting after my book, and you will come to know why the more we go into this. It's not going to be the episode you think, folks. It's not going to be quotes from the book. It's not going to be anything of that nature. You're going to see a completely different episode than what you're thinking you're going to see. So this is the affirmation and blessing I just came up with right now. To those that were led down the garden path of convolution and deception, your time and path of change is contingent on the version of you that now stands in the present moment. The past remains to teach and to learn from. And I just did that about 2 minutes ago. So the date of this episode is 11/19/22. And we can take it from this point.
Let me go first.
Okay.
So the reason I say let me go first is I like to give you context of where the show actually came from. So, in life in general, happens to all of us, we oftentimes take a moment to reflect. Now, although this was recorded on the 19th of November, it's probably not going to air until getting closer to New Year's, which is a time a lot of times people spend a lot of time in reflection of the year before. This is a little bit longer period than that, not just the year before, but the growth that has actually, been occurring specifically, probably more related to being a person who is known as a channeler, and maybe a seer, but with the heart's desire of wanting to truly see things as they are. Now, you may think that what I'm saying is being able to see the individual you're working with very clearly. That could be one way you interpret it. But it actually has a larger connotation that really is what was in play, which is seeing the dynamics and life and energies and movement and benevolence and things not for your higher good. In the complete desire to want to be able to be genuine and authentic and to provide information that, to the best of our knowledge, is as let's just use the word truthful, because that's even, in question, but as truthful as possible with the abilities you currently have to process that. And so it becomes a larger discussion. The one thing that we've always said is that no one is perfected. There's not a soul on this earth who doesn't have things to grow through, to live through, to experience through. Many people really, in hindsight, would partly be, I wish I would have just read it in the book and known, but the wisdom of life, of growth, comes from being immersed within the experience of it. So it is the knowledge, let's say a book knowledge, plus the experience of life that gives you the wisdom. And if you can let go of certain preconceived notions, then you can also share a journey of personal growth that everyone is experiencing, but you're not ashamed to say you're experiencing it as well. This is where I was, this is where I am. Thus, again, the name of the book and the name of the title of the show, From the Fall to the Lifting, as an example. it's the one thing that when we began this open journey, I should say, when we began this, that it always was our heartfelt desire to provide conversation that maybe was thought-provoking at times, but to provide a conversation that would aid in people's spiritual growth with examples and with things talking about either the challenges or how to work through those challenges to bring you closer to controlling basically your life better and understanding it better. We're absolutely no different, nor were we exempt from any of those kinds of lessons. But I can truly tell you that it was our heartfelt desire that we never wanted to even unknowingly be bringing through information that was really for somebody else's good. But along the way, you have to learn, well, what are the warning signs of something like that, for example, to know maybe you should or shouldn't. So this is really a reflection, I think. Probably going to be more in an interview style, because I think a lot of this has to do with your growth because of what you do for a profession. And, more of being open and honest about it in a way that can free people to feel they can be open and honest about their own experiences, and that they're okay and there's nothing wrong with them. This is the journey of how it works. So, with that, we were having a pretty long discussion, about let's just, again, I guess you can say personal frustrations.
Yeah,
and I think, again, it would be more in the area that Chris was talking about, some historic personal frustrations and trying to gain a bigger understanding of the purposes of going through some of it, rather than just standing on the sideline and looking at it, how it ends up happening, and how even potentially even benevolence can play a part. But what they're playing a part of is not necessarily what you would think is the highest of benevolence, but in a sense, the highest in showing you something, which
pushing you towards something,
which actually could hurt a little. So, so what really is, let's say that I'll just use the word God because people like to use that. What is a guide's purpose? To always make it pretty? Or is it to help you gain the wisdom you want to gain? And sometimes that's going to be through experience. So I think there's probably maybe in this fall to the lifting kind of context, part of Chris's personal journey was actually, there was a book called From the Fall to the Lifting that you took off.
Yeah, this is also this. I'll begin with the context of the title, and I'll go from there. Back in the day when I wrote this, I was getting some channelings that during the times of Atlantis, I caused a great fall, which that is not necessarily false. Turankal pulled a lot of shenanigans around the times of the fall of Atlantis. I won't go into the complete history. That's not 100% relevant to this particular show. That's more of a galactic history sort of thing. But but during around the times, or I was being told that I was basically the sole destroyer of Atlantis at the time. That was incorrect. Turankal was just tricked and doing many things, and other people contributed, from scientists to witches to warriors, to put it bluntly. And where I got this from was a guide, quote unquote, around that time said, once you caused a great fall, now you're going to bring about a great lifting. And that's where the context for the lifting originated from. That's the etymology essentially behind it. Fast forward a little bit to when I actually wrote the book. This actually came from some of the very notebooks that I have been burning in the barrel outside. And some of you may be shocked at some of the things that I'm about to say with this, but proof of how or and why this book should not see the light of day again, I will add context to this. When this was written, I not only was believing certain beings when they were trying to pump me up for a future that never came to pass and for events that never came to pass, but that they pumped me up to be some kind of like guru in society or public figure, which again, I'm a YouTube public figure, or I do lectures with Joanna where we have our website. Then we also go to psychic fairs, things of that nature. What they were originally getting at was this big, like Deepak Chopra sized crowd. And I'm not dumping on him. I'm just trying to give an example. This is not going to happen. I'm telling you right now, because this was also SSP programming. They were trying to get me to have all this enormous attention on just myself. This is why I don't completely allow that. I include Joanna in all of these things. We're doing this together. With this book, I'll fast forward to something that happened, a couple things that happened in the modern day, and then I will backtrack to as it's relevant. In a session that was about, I would have to say, roughly a year ago, back in 2021 ish. I had a gentleman that I was reading, and he had a copy of From the Fall to the Lifting, and he was quoting some things in the book. He goes, I do believe you've contradicted yourself. You said he's quoted something on galactic history, and then he said, well, you guys have now said this. They can't both be true. And I said, you're absolutely correct. I said I was being deceived at the time that was written. I do apologize for that. I was being led down the garden path. We now have the more truthful information. There'll be more truthful information that comes out of that even in the future. And he said, thank you for your transparency in this. And what I can't remember exactly what he was referring to, but I can say that the reason I redacted this, and people online thought when this disappeared from Amazon and from Barnes and Noble, that it was somehow the cabal canceling me. It was like, oh, there was so much truth in this, that they just canceled you. And I had to tell people, it's like, no, I'm sorry, I took this down. And people were trying to buy up as many copies as they could, trying to get it out there. And I do appreciate that. While I do appreciate that, it was not something that I wanted, because I personally was pulling it. And people from different parts of the globe were telling me like, oh, this is sacred information. I know no matter what you say, you're something has happened here. And then there was another crowd that thought, since I pulled this, that one of two scenarios happened, both of which either Joanna was considered to be a handler, or the cabal corrupted me to go away from ancient and truthful information. No, I broke glass ceilings and broke away from my original self and my original bit of information that I was at the time that I channeled this and wrote it. I was far too trusting and far too gullible. And I am extremely anal retentive and OCD when it comes to not quite OCD, but I'm some beings are on thin ice with me a lot of the times anymore. I trust very few, and I have to feel the information out a lot more before I ever announce anything. And this went all the way up to Galactic Interstellar Council and the Lifting. Even some of our old stuff, I'm going to have to make annotations to some of our original episodes from about 5 years ago, I believe. What I'm trying to also get at is I in order to test the waters, I was originally going to republish the book. And my intuition told me test the waters first with the newer crowd and see what happens. And there was this Fallout episode me and Ryan did. I believe it was either Fallout 2 or 3. And there was something that had to do with some modern politics that was actually some disclosure that was in that. Thinking, okay, this is what's appropriate here is one of my channelings that I did of George Washington back in that book. I'm thinking, okay, this fits to what this said. but I put a paragraph above this before I posted it under the video. I've since taken I've taken all the written information from the descriptor under the video out now, and it's not on Facebook. That descriptor is not on Facebook either. I put a paragraph above, please do not take this as sacrosanct, because of the fact that I was being misled here to follow a narrative that they not only mentioned within the Fallout game series, but they're now playing out in modern day politics, even through 2020 and 2021. And I left it at that because of the politics they were trying to, the channel was about, a future civil war between Democrat and Republican, the bashing you're seeing currently now, but it was made to sound much worse. And that's exactly what the cabal and the corporations and all of them were trying to do. They're trying to rabble-rouse so people were fighting, and that it didn't quite work around the January 6th thing. So there was more to it than that, but I'm not going to go into that right now. That's a totally different video. When I put that up, like not 10 minutes after I posted that, a couple people were getting back to me going, thank you. They were like, thank you very much. You know, we knew a war was coming. We knew all this was coming. We want to thank you so much for bringing this through. And I had to pause a minute after I took my face out of my hand at that moment. And I got on there and I said, did you not read the paragraph that was above? And I say, don't take this as sacrosanct, meaning don't take it as seriously as what the original channel context was. Take it in this new context as a learning curve for myself. Having participated in a narrative I knew nothing about is what I was trying to say. And then now I'm closing that particular circle and saying, I have now learned this new bit of information and I am stepping back from that narrative. That's essentially what I meant by the paragraph above that. They're like, well, where did you see this again? Was this on your website? Where was this exactly? It was right. I said, it's right here. I even highlighted it. I went into snippet tool and pointed to it. They're like, I'm just not seeing this. But are you sure it's there? I said, and I finally got mad and I said, are you blind? It's right here. I even showed where the guy was responding underneath. I said, it is right there. And then he just went backwards in a loop. Obviously hit a programming error somewhere, went backwards in a loop and said, well, thank you. I just knew this was going to happen. I knew this. And he would not comment on any of the information I had above, only the lower bit of information. The channel was all the way at the bottom and this was at the top. And another person was basically went into this other confusion loop and said, I'm just not understanding what you're saying. Are you saying that now this is wrong? Yes. Well, why is that exactly? I have it above. I described the whole thing before I posted it in writing. Well, where is this on your website? Where is it? I mean, it was the same program backwards loop that was going on. And I finally just said, screw it, I'm deleting it. And it just would not, they would not get past that barrier. And I deleted this. Then I got a few private messages going, I think someone canceled that channel you put up because it's now gone. I think Facebook deleted it. I'm thinking, I'm like this, you know, I had to just walk away. I was too pissed at that point. I had to walk away from the computer because of the sheer level of programming and stupidity that came out of that conversation. And attention deficit disorder, I couldn't deal with it. And I walked away. And from that point forward, I knew I could not publish that book ever again because of people would be paying too much attention to this and not seeing the growth that took place from this period to that period. And even now I can feel something screwing with my head just a little bit here. But somebody's very, very angry that I'm making the comparisons from the past to the modern.
But again, in the intention that we very strongly put forth of different things was wanting to know, how does it all really work? How does everything work? And through the frustrating frustrating example of learning what you learned to take down the book, and then trying to be transparent and trying to highlight how these missteps in information can occur. It still couldn't be seen.
No.
Which again, if you can say programming, you can say what you want. You can call it people only see what they want to know.
Telepathic coercion.
Or people just want to reinforce a belief system they currently have. That the attempt to try and have this conversation, it wasn't a time where people could have it. So you really were faced with two choices. I'm either going to become so frustrated I want to kill everybody, or it's just not time and we're just not going to have this conversation right now, because if I can't get across what I'm trying to get across, why bother? And you don't want people still then reinforcing, which was starting to happen again, a false narrative that was attempting to be still reinforced. So it hurts, right? And it's one of those things, like, I could have read this in a book somewhere, but to really understand in wisdom, right, how people react, how people can see or not see, how all of this, how would really, it's one of those things where until you really go through the experience of what it's like to be deceived in channeling, of to be used as a puppet in channeling, to be, to recognizing it, how do you pull yourself out of it? How do you try to have an honest conversation about it and all the ins and outs? I mean, how would you ever know that type of, let's call it growth and wisdom, if you didn't experience it? Because this is one of those hard conversations where, no one wants to go through that. No one who would want to go through that. You want to believe you're always putting your best foot forward. You want to believe that you're Teflon. You want to believe that, oh no, if I've been given these gifts, I'm never going to make a mistake, right? You want to believe that. And there are plenty of beings out there that'll have you potentially believing that. And it's really not as easy, as you think. So I think that's an example. One example, there'll be a few more here, but it weighed heavy on you. That whole thing weighed heavy on you. And again, the desire to want to have the conversation and clean up was very difficult to let go of.
Yes, and I've noticed even right now, I've noticed there's other seers and channelers out there that are running into this exact same snare that I ran into, and it's frustrating as holy hell. There's one in particular, I will not mention this person's name. I'm not going to mention the name. I know you told me not to do that, but I have to reinforce this right now. I must reinforce this. And from this point forward, you're not going to hear me say those words ever again in the show.
I think people should know by now that we'll talk about scenarios, but not necessarily mention names.
But with this, I had to say it at least one more time. So you won't hear me again. I will just end up going into a more generic example, or I will say there's something currently going on, but I won't say, I'm not going to mention the name because now it's obvious. But this, there's one in particular right now that many people are following. There's and this person believes wholeheartedly that these two particular aliens that were mentioned are basically trying to give humanity a gift. They're basically trying to get this person inducted in what I call the cool kids crowd, or smokers corner. You'll hear Isaac mentioning that in Galactic Interstellar Council episode. And what these two aliens are doing, not only would they be in violation of all those galactic treaties that you've heard us talk about in galactic politics, all the actions they're talking about would be impossible to do. I ran into these two aliens. They're leading this person down the garden path, and they're going to leave her either destitute, or they're going to leave her with basically nothing. And they're trying to do to this person that these other groups were doing to me. And if you see a few bleeps in there, I accidentally said the word her. I do apologize. I slipped. What they're doing to this person they're also making it so other people back this person up, and then if anybody questions the validity of the channels, these people are automatically accused of being skeptical of the process. Not skeptical of the process, I'm skeptical of the beings giving the messages. This is also, I want to reiterate that, and in my own history, with the book and some subsequent writings that happened at the same time and thereafter within some of those notebooks that I've now had to destroy. From the fall to the lifting, you will see, if anybody has a copy of this, you will see where the beings on the L tracks are mentioned in the first front of the book, where I mentioned these beings on the L tracks, and there were these beings with different colored eyes. That was a convoluted, misdecoded memory of the pre-secret space program times. When I was 5 years old, I was abducted by the military, and there were also these military doctors and soldiers that had these weird colored lights on their heads, trying to make me think that there was something else going on, and my warped memory automatically thought some kind of spiritual experience. I'm not negating any spiritual experiences people have had. This was myself. Fast forward a minute to a couple of the chapters, whereas I was mentioning, it was in the Michael chapter where I was mentioning the military chasing me around on an aircraft carrier. That was a convoluted misdecoded memory fragment of the secret space program, where they took me out to a base, not an aircraft carrier, that was on the West Coast. Also, all the rest of the channelings with some of the galactic history and Earth histories that were in there, it was coming from an Orion side or an Orion perspective, that they were seeing their side as righteous and correct in the wars that they started, and they were basically putting down not only other races, and basically saying that they were in the wrong, or they were taking the names of other races and using them, and taking the names of other beings and using them like they do in channels. Aside from good beings using names people already know about, I don't always approve of that tactic. But they were also taking galactic historical events and either justifying what they had done, or basically saying, well, this society was corrupted, we had to decay this planet. There was one in particular that got my attention, whereas this being came in and said that, oh, this society had become corrupted and decay and decadent, we had to dissolve this planet society, cull them, and start over. What does that sound like? That sounds like Enlil and the Great Flood, or Yahweh and the Great Flood. That's that same Noah's flood story right there, out there in the galaxy, that showed that this was actually just a conquering race that disapproved of some other genetic strain that was around and just decided to destroy all of them. So these were writings that were going to follow that book and create subsequent volumes. Thankfully, I did not do this. So my intuition made me hesitate for quite some time. And now I fully, or at least understand more of this process than I did then. There was so much more to this now that I know about certain earthly and galactic histories. Now I know where I went wrong with that. There also were other writings that I was starting to write a fictional series based on a planet that I now know from my secret space program time called Lystaria, and another one called Andaria. And I won't go in, again, that's a show in and of itself. That's a book in and of itself. But I started writing these names down, and my subconscious was apparently blurting out some stuff. But other beings out there were not only inserting their names in that fictional series, they were tapping into my creativity and my imagination to try to put some of their agendas in there, or try to not get me to remember what real scenarios took place. One example I will give how this trickery took place was, and this goes back to the narrative being put in people's heads that you've heard us talk about, where this actually was flipped. This went to more of a positive connotation, where the truth was actually more gruesome. Seen on Lystaria, where this was a planet where the space Nazis had culled a population. And In the happier ending, I was actually in this scenario where I was climbing up out of this rubble. Even some weird music was playing in my head, like it was like this, like a happier ending or something like this. And I was seeing a sunrise, all of this, and I wrote that into the original story. Truth was, the light I was seeing were the headlights of a vehicle of the Martian Germans that were here that pulled up, and basically there to inform me my punishment was to see the culling of this planet that was going on. It went from non-truth or lie that my brain was actually trying to account for something traumatic and decoded it wrong, and then it went to the actual truth when I figured it out, and the truth was far more gruesome and negative, but I gained sovereignty and truth out of it. The reason I bring this up is because I was writing it down as this happier thing when in fact it was not. And then from that point, what I had to do was integrate that, decode that properly, and not go mentally insane from those actual memories. Integrate it properly and discard the energies that no longer belonged in the present. And then I came to realize that a lot of some of those earlier channelings were trying to block me from figuring out some of these fundamental truths that I had to figure out in order not only to keep my own sanity, but in order to stay grounded and to actually deliver the correct information. And not that I'm negating writing fiction, not that I'm negating writing poetry, not that I'm negating ever writing a book ever again, which, yeah, I am going to, and we will. But it has to be cerned over quite heavily. And also I just have to look at this more closely. And this also stretches into my sessions, because some of these things I was using as examples in earlier sessions as well. That's how this kind of spider web kind of formed. Fast forward to even now. There were some examples that I have been using that I thought were platforms, stable foundations that just crumbled into dust right in front of me. Even certain tactics and sessions. This is why you won't ever see me telling futures ever again, except in saying that it's a probability. You have to make this happen. That's the only time you're going to ever hear me say anything like that. And also soulmate relationship type of stuff, except in very rare occurrences where I can actually see the certain compatibility and a stable foundation under this, and see that the person is making an effort to keep it and create and co-create a stable foundation. That with future and relationship issues. The reason I am saying this is because there have been, even in closer to now, certain sessions which now I look back on them and go, even though it's these people's responsibility to actually do what they want to do, co-create what they want to co-create, and make things happen. That's why it's never wise to tell futures, because it falls anywhere within the multiverse, and you never can tell if it's your own universe or not. But you run the risk of not only planting a seed that somebody will think, oh, everything's going to be okay, I'll move to this place, and then it's going to, everything's going to work itself out, because they have been told that the universe provides, which it does, but it doesn't mean that you don't do your portion of this. And it doesn't mean that you completely carte blanche do exactly even what I say. You have to discern and figure this out on your own. Yes, should you follow instructions as far as entities go, and as far as setting up certain like devices and doing certain mantras and certain ways of cleansing your property. Yeah, that's more my wheelhouse right there. This other area has become very convoluted, very murky as far as I'm concerned, and that's just why I'm scooping this out and I'm discarding this, because it doesn't serve, and it doesn't serve the person to lay down a set of instructions as far as their future goes, and then when certain things don't happen and that person say stagnates, that not only doesn't look good for myself, but it's actually harming that person because they were so hinged on that. Now, when it goes to protecting your house and protecting yourself, yes, there are stringent instructions involved in that. But
again, some of the things that I think was a big deal as far as wisdom and learning is that one of the things that we've always said from the very beginning is the importance of co-creating the future that you want.
Yeah.
So,
You
and
can change every bit of your soul mission along the way too. It's not always locked in stone either, unless you make it that way.
And again, we've said everything's being done at the same time. So that means a multitude of different variations of a situation is being potentially played out all at the same time for the, let's say, the perceived oversoul to get a total good view of all the potential situations and an understanding of something. So the question then becomes, can a seer actually hone in on the one? Or is it one of a potential at a time? I think one of the hard things for seers is that there was a thought process and a belief system of singular. And so, you know what I mean? Feeling like that if they honed in on one and they saw a clear picture, that must be the one, not even having, because again, you have to.
You're seeing a point in time, a ripple or a wave in time. And it's hard to distinguish. If you have a bias in place, you're going to think, oh, that's my soulmate. That might not be the case. It's just you're seeing a ripple and wave in time somewhere along the time stream.
Right. And it could be, you know, all kinds of things that a channeler, I'm not saying they're not really looking at something, but is it really relevant to what's going on right now? It's no different than somebody, you know, talking to a being. And you don't know if you're talking to a being who's equivalent in current present moment, or you're talking to someone who was alive 5,000 years ago, but you've crossed space-time to be speaking to them.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that through the experience of doing it, some of our original thought processes of everything's playing out at the same time, but what's connected to your current present moment, it's kind of difficult really to know that, you know, you've felt like you've had to modify, you know what I mean? Because again, people are going to somebody because they want them to tell them what to do. They want them to be the savior to see. They want them, they don't want to co-create. They want to just.
Oh, I understand that other people need help on certain things, and there's some things only certain people are qualified to do, but this, no.
No, this is something a little bit different. But for you personally, how would you know the pitfalls of all of that unless you, I think you know, one of the things you have to reflect on is how would you know all of this to really be able to have an open and honest conversation about it unless you really experienced it. And then you could see what we wanted to know. We, you, we wanted to know what it really was all about. So again, another moment that's more current present moment that you've really had to sit back and go, what is for a person's highest good that if I'm participating in this, what, you know, what can you take to the bank? What can't you take to the bank? And I think as you're modifying what you feel you're strongest at and some of those things that you feel, you know what, I'm just seeing a blip. But unless all of these other dominoes fall, and who knows if they will, so you know, it almost becomes a question, well, what do you want to happen? And then what are you doing to make it happen? Almost like a counseling session versus a seer who can see exactly to the end. And I do believe that many seers and many people are having a more and more difficult time seeing that far in advance anymore, because again, and why would that be? Well, because people are co-creating at a faster rate, so it's hard. I think a lot of really good ones are finding it more and more difficult to be able to truly pin down anything, you know, as being anything more than just an interesting suggestion, you know, that you can listen to say, well, do I want that at all? Or do I want to reject that? Or so you have to have as a client now, you know, even for us listening to other people, it's kind of, well, that's interesting and I'll think about it. But then there's not an immediate acceptance of that is the way it will be. And there shouldn't be these days.
And even back when I was on Diamond Network, there was a woman that came to me at that time. And she was fairly furious with me at that time. And this probably should have been a clue, Sherlock, that I shouldn't do this. This was back in 2015-ish, somewhere in there. And she said, you know, none of the things you told me came true. And I said, and I did say at the time, did you do anything to make it happen? And well, no. The universe provides. Why would I even step one foot out of my house? And I said, well, there's your problem right there. It's one of those God only helps those that help themselves sort of situations. You had to actually make this happen. And now the timelines have changed. And also, the timelines have indeed changed from things that people have seen. And there was something I ran across recently that, you know, it's one of those days where you should stay off Facebook. And just like in 2020, I probably should not have even picked my phone up. But in this particular one, this was this year, and this person was actually quoting an old Edgar Casey prophecy, and people will be very familiar with this one. It's the one where he was talking about the pole shift and, you know, Atlantis rising and part of the United States falling into the ocean. Everybody's familiar with that particular prophecy, and one of the best seers there ever was. But at the same time, these people are not gods; they're not omnipotent. You might be an oversoul, you might be an avatar, you might be even mantling at the time, bringing all the useful information together. But he was seeing one timeline of trillions for one in the multiverse. What doesn't happen here happens in another part of the multiverse. That's just the rules of the multiverse. Two, this person that was saying this was basically saying, oh, when this happens, and referring to it as sacrosanct, as fact. And you don't want to do this either. Oh, when millions of people die, when the pole shift comes, and Atlantis rises, and part of the continents fall, and all this, you know, and he kept going on and on and on and on about this. And I finally interjected. I said, do you really want that to happen? Oh, no, I'm using scientific data based on, I said, you're basing on Edgar Casey's prophecy, aren't you? Yes. Was there scientific data behind that prophecy? You're saying you're using science. And you're skeptical of me. Why would you want those chain of events to happen? Even he didn't understand that there were timelines and temporal shifts. Yes, is there a shift of the earth? Yes, but that doesn't mean that it's part of this shift in consciousness that you're talking about. He was talking about this too, and this is a misnomer that's out there as well. That's part of the narrative that these beings were trying to get me on, the train they were trying to get me on. And this is why Edgar Casey put his ARE center in Virginia Beach, because he thought that would be safe territory where his library could be. That's why that was erected to begin with. And this guy basically said, "Oh, come on." He basically went, "Yawn, you're boring me. You know, there's always some people like you that say we have a choice in this. This is basically God's choice of culling the earth again." And I just, my hand was in my, like, I was like this, you know, when I saw this, I'm thinking, yeah, I can't participate in this conversation anymore at that point. And I try to plant seeds of the new information whenever possible. And it wasn't him that I was aiming for; it was the people that were taking the information heart, and that was really my original goal to begin with. But did I get into a kind of a volleying match with this guy? Yeah, a little bit. And I always advise people, don't do this. But I had to do something because this person would not stop touting this and basically saying, you know, Planet X was going to be pulling the Earth one way, which I know that the Galactics have set up a system to where it's a slow pole shift and not this Kali Yuga or catastrophic event like what they said 2012 was going to be, or something of that nature. You know, it's not like the pole shifts of the past. And people have always associated with this with how can I put it, with some kind of spiritual awakening or ascension. This is what I started falling into originally as well. And I wanted to make sure the updated information was put out there. Some people would accuse me of evangelizing the information, but that's not really what my goal was. My goal was to apply the update. And basically, like, you have a computer that gets updates, you know, things of that nature. And I was trying to update the information. I mean, it was a few minutes later when this guy just deleted my whole comment set, and he put up a new thread up and said, okay, aside from this is what I know here. And he completely shut it down after probably about 10 minutes or so. But other people saw it, and and through the change of energies we call in millimeters and centimeters, that was originally my original goal right there. And it got through to a few people, and then that spreads, and then that spreads. That's what the goal was. But I don't ever want to participate in something like that again, where I am interlocked into a narrative such as this, with any beings that are spreading some pseudo spiritual movement, or pseudo scientific movement. And I'm very, very careful about this now. And I sometimes get a burr up my butt and I see somebody else doing it, and I feel I have to say something. But so people have seen some posts on Facebook. That's why. But but I'm not out to fight. I'm just out to update the information. And my intuition says insert here, and it got through to a few people. Even people got back to me and said thank you. So it did work on some level. I just don't want to participate in something that would not benefit myself, Joanna, my family, or anybody reading this, by putting something out there that could possibly send people sliding backwards. It's like what we told you in an earlier episode, whereas some aliens were trying to revert back some of the spiritual teachings without the updated information. This other thing was part of that. And it's part of the planned entropy of civilization as well. It ties right back into the entropy concept as well. So this is something that I refuse to participate in as a person, and I refuse to participate in any of these negative narratives that are out there, or ill co-creative, naive narratives out there. So this is why you will never see that the book will never see the light of day, unless we are either posting something on our website, or we are creating something new with the updated information already in it, without the old channelings in it. I won't put the old channelings in it because people always seem to get interlocked into it. One more example where I was led down the garden path. I do want to say one more thing before you go into this. Was the video that I had to take off of the YouTube, was that Obama Valiant Thor fiasco that I was involved in as well. I do admit this, I was led down the garden path there, and I've since also been in contact with the real Valiant Thor that has said, yes, he's assisted in kind of making up some of the narrative surrounding Barack Obama. But at the same time, he washed his hands of it a long time ago, and that wasn't him that I was channeling. Another area where somebody was trying to get me into a pseudo-political narrative. That was also going to be in another book that's not going to see the light of day. So I just wanted to conclude with that. So
the other thing, again, in the same line of what you don't want to participate, that's had to be glaring to you and examples to gain the wisdom, let's say, again, is that other part where he's talking about personal information, where someone may be asking, what's my future? You know, where should I be? You know, when is my partner coming in? I want this one to be my partner, but they're reluctant, or, you know, whatever that stuff is going on. I think, again, not liking to be wrong. I'm going to put it as simple as that. You can't stand it when you feel that you've put out wrong information. Now, again, so being wrong, or again, people looking at you in a way where they may be taking everything out of your mouth as more sacrosanct, and you don't want that either, because you know how difficult these things are to choose that it's not necessarily your wheelhouse to deal in some of these areas, because people are still having a difficult time coming at it from a certain perspective, rather than just this seer told me this, so it must be going to unfold. And it doesn't really work like that. But until you're involved in some of it, and until you experience some of it, and you see the fallout and the ramifications, that you don't necessarily know and you don't want to lead someone down a garden path that isn't true. You know, with that, we have no desire to do that. I say that even with the information that's, you know, coming out now. To the best of our abilities, we are refining, we are trying to revet, we're trying to rehab conversation. But you know, knowing that we're not perfected, no, you know, you're not perfected, that God knows who, you know, let's hope there's something really big we don't have to retract another year from now. But if you want me to say that we, you know, have it all right, and of course that won't happen, we're wise enough to say we shouldn't say that. And again, we've said it before, and if you come in this and your let's just say your ego, I don't know what else to say, your ego can't allow you to relook at things, rehash things. The truth is the truth until a new truth comes along kind of scenario, and you can't do that, or you know, or you run across somebody who cannot be that way, that should be a discernment moment for you, because no, from our understanding, there is no human on this earth that is gained to that level. So you take the information in and you see how it feels. There may be interest, and that's, you know, kind of why sometimes now we're just saying we're going to have a conversation, because, you know, we're going to add what we can and try to bring in what information that we can. But do we know it's perfected? We're doing our best. And that's about really all that can be asked of somebody. I think, again, with the perspective that it truly is the intention, which is probably why so much of this has happened so quickly, that we want to know how it works. We want to know the intricacies of how it works. The real secrets of the system, the real secrets of, again, the strategies that are being employed. How intelligent is that other side? And they're pretty darn intelligent as far as knowing the psychology of humans, the psychology of movement, and the movement of energies or whatever. Hats off that it's really, you know, something that you really have to look back in awe and say, wow, that's a pretty well good oiled machine. And you know, but also trying to be able to put, you know, little cogs here and there so that, you know, people can grow through and understand it and then gain better control of the system. I think one of the newer areas, probably one that we've always tiptoed around, that probably an area that I guess I'm going to say hurts the most. If you have to say an area that hurts the most, it's probably going to be for us related to conversation around the secret space program. You know, we, in tipping your hat to an energy conglomerate, let's say, that knows what they're doing, and they know how to break people down, build them up how they want. They know how to get self-farming done. I mean, you know, you got to have your hat off to that. As certain memories, certain things were coming back in, all of these different things that are going on with people, to want to believe that it was as simple as having, you know, a 20-year service somewhere and then being put back and being left alone. That you just want to believe that okay, well, they just, you know, wiped your mind, brought you back. They're not going to let you get to the height you were, because you're not going to have anything pumped into your body that's going to enhance your skills, right? And all of these different things going on. But to really understand how that system has been put into place to, let's just say, ensure its secrecy and control. I don't know any other way to say it. And some instances, again, with the intention and the desire to truly want to know what it's all about, truly want to know how it all functions. You know, unfortunately, the only way, again, to gain the wisdom of that is to be kind of involved in some of that, discovery, involved in some of the controversy, involved in it, not trying to be as directly involved in other, but being on the periphery and being a part of it enough to be able to see and understand it. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all.
No.
And to say that those involved have somehow gained now the upper hand in that specific topic, I'm going to say absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely
No.
not. And so, you know, the strategies that are employed to continually, let's say, oppress people and get them involved like a dog chasing their tail, those strategies are so well oiled and so well put together that, you know, in order to heal and move past it, you sometimes have to completely drop the conversation and look at what healing and get it past it, and getting past it, it really, you may have to define that differently in your life than what you're currently defining that as, in order to come out of it halfway healthy.
And also, should the topics we talk about, like Secret Speech Program, absolutely, but at the same time, you know, sometimes rehashing an old wound is like pouring salt into it. Sometimes you're locking onto a particular timeline that's no longer conducive to the now, but sometimes it's the inversion or the reverse of that, where you're supposed to let something out and it changes something in the outer world as well. You have to discern which one is conducive to yourself at that point, whether you're supposed to continue on that thought train, or you're supposed to stop and then also heal from it. Is talking about it healing and cathartic, or is not talking about it healing and cathartic? And
it really varies, and that's the really difficult thing. It really varies from person to person which avenue. I will just say this, and we've said this before, one of the big hooks. So again, you're dealing with the program, you're dealing with the outside world, you're dealing with other worlds, you're dealing with colonization, you're dealing with all of these topics with being militaristic, being potentially involved in what's called hardcore military, being the victims of that, being the participants in that, enjoying, you know, potentially the ruthlessness of it at times, and feeling somehow better or superior versus, you know, being victimized by it. You've probably been involved in all of these things. What's really an easy strategy to employ for people when you're actually having these conversations is the idea of some sort of retribution and justice. It becomes a huge hook that will keep people in anger and keep them chasing their tails, where that type of thought and energy can be very destructive.
Validation and veneration and justice. Yes, do you deserve all of these things? Absolutely. Will you get all of these things? Probably not.
Right.
And some people were tricked into thinking they were going to get paid for their service coming back and everything. And what did they get? Targeted.
Right. And so, do we believe these conversations are worth happening? You better believe it. But it needs to be done in a way from individual to individual of what can you handle? What were you put through? Were you even programmed to, being back here, programmed to react in a certain way? How can these conversations be had in a way that opens up the information but is not destructive to the people that have already been victimized once? Because again, you're dealing with evil genius. You're not dealing with a fairness. You're not dealing with things like that. And you're also dealing with information that is probably not going to see the light of day on a public level that you feel you are entitled to. So then what does healing and what does moving forward look like? If it can't look like that, which is the ultimate of what a lot of people want, how does it still move forward in a way that allows you to not be crushed and allows you to win? From our perspective, winning is moving forward in a way that you can be at peace and still move forward and spiritually grow.
And also talk about this as well. Talking about it, of course, will change and update the information by millimeters and centimeters. That's why it's happening the way it's happening. But as far as is basically the whole mass arrest thing, these people, no, what they would do is they would just elect people for show to get arrested, which is what they were trying to do in the past. And people forget the space Nazis. They're in space. Do you think they're just going to lay down their weapons and say, nope, times are changing, we're just going to surrender, the energy's changing? No, they made all that crap up in that way. Are times changing? Yes. Are people becoming more aware? Yes. But did they make up some of these other things? Yes, they did. And did they also, are they trying to put out secret space program light, as I like to say with the Space Force? Yes, they are negating any of the atrocities and basically saying anybody that remembers these is like mentally insane or retarded in some way, going, oh, those poor people, they're not remembering that right. It didn't happen away. Some of them, they'll probably even say, no, some of them had positions of power. They were in charge of this. They just are delusional. If somebody says you were in charge of something, or if you think you were in charge of something, you were not. You were a slave, pure and simple.
And we've said that before, but I think the important part of this conversation, the wisdom that has come from this is on a personal level, this hurts. Yeah. On a personal level, I can tell you this hurts. You don't see us have as many in-depth discussions as other people do about this, because we're trying to weigh being healthy. And again, sometimes to be healthy, when you are caught in a loop, okay, and you may or may not recognize it, the most healthy thing that can be done is not participating in the discussion anymore. Because breaking out of some of this, if you've been made to only see things a certain way, and again, I'm not saying it was nice or fair, it was cruel and mean. The only way sometimes is to not focus on it, and then to try and find peace and grounding in other ways, then to slowly come back and be able to have the conversation. And hopefully at that moment, you're not hooked again, that you can have more of a conversation without being pulled into a hook that will do nothing but be destructive.
Yep.
So this area has been difficult. It really has been difficult. It's not, I know for myself, it's not me being cold to it. It's me wanting to find a healthy solution of healing towards people involved. And the solution currently that a lot of people want will not come about. It is there to hook them and to damage them more and more and more.
Certainly, basically, and will this information, is it sovereign? And will this help raise or move your frequency a little faster? Yeah, but at the same time, constantly circling it. This is last year, folks. This is one of the things that actually made me vulnerable to being sick really bad last year around this time, because I was bulldozing the SSP memories. I was basically going through them. I got enough of them back to basically know certain things and know that I was not discerning things correctly. And I believe that was the purpose of it all along. But I went too far into it, and my body started to pay the price. And my mind started to pay the price. Did I get those memories back? Yes, I did. Did I do it very quickly? Yes, I did. But it also made me vulnerable to getting very sick. And I didn't realize that's what had happened until much longer after. Another thing, and I will probably cap this off at this point before I start trailing off into something else. But this is also relevant not only to that, but the book material as well. There are 2 points here. One, people always knew me as actually going after like these paramilitary groups and going after like looking into bases and alien compounds and all this. And do I do that if it's an emergency? Do I have to disconnect from something or somebody from something? Yes, but I'm really fast. Or if I have to look into a bad dimension like the void dimension or something like that, is it like connecting out, which is inadvisable, by the way, for any seers. But the thing of it is, I used to destroy things. I used to blow stuff up. I rarely ever do this anymore because I was paying the price for this. I wasn't untracing my steps. I wasn't burning my shoes, basically. You always hear me use the phrase, burn your shoes. It burns that quantum pathway. I did not know these things then. I do now, and I'm very, very careful. Especially in people's sessions where I'm having to find the sources of some of these. And I will always do that part. That's part of an integral part of trench working. But when I would carry it too far, basically mooning these people, flipping them off and saying, F you and the horse you rode in on, that's when I got blowback and retribution for that. And these are forces that they say are weakening, but I've seen layers behind the scenes that they're not really weakening, they just change shape. And me pounding them like that wasn't changing anything, disconnecting from certain energies was, and changing things in the millimeters and centimeters to make permanent changes on the earth and for the clients and for myself and for Joanna and my family. Permanent when I was doing it in the little increments like that. And Valiant Thor did have a point. He did say the slow drip would be more meaningful and it would be more permanent. He was true. He was absolutely true and correct when he said that. I'm almost vomiting a little saying that because I do want things to happen faster. Have I seen good futures out there, versions of the future where things are peaceful and happy hundreds of years from now? Yes, I have seen that and variations in between there. The other point I wanted to make was I used to do sessions and travel to places to correct. There was somebody that used to have me go gallivanting all around and correcting certain things, or supposedly correcting certain things. Oh, China was doing this. Oh, Middle East is doing this. Oh, Mexico is doing this. US is doing this. And there was unbelievable amounts of blowback for correcting these things. And are people wrong for wanting certain situations corrected? Absolutely not. They're not wrong. But I was basically honing in on military targets, demonic targets, dimensional targets, and we would go in these places in disguise, or what this person had me believe was disguise. These targets were not stupid, folks. They could clearly see was who I said I was. Even Isaac was with us on one of these, and the whole time he was dressed like a clown. What he was trying to tell me was that this was a circus. This is a script, and only a clown would do something like this. He was trying to tell me that through the whole thing, but he was basically seeing that I would have to repeatedly put the fork or the penny in the light socket. I don't do that kind of crap anymore, folks. Can I disguise myself with my charcoal layer if I have to correct an immediate situation and get out? Yes, but if you prolong, like I did in another thing, where somebody had me look in on then just elected President Trump. And I said several times to this person, I have to stop now or I'm going to be noticed. This person just kept asking questions and asking questions. And I was stupid and didn't cut the cord. In about 2 seconds flat, there were several government remote viewers on me that made my life a living hell for a couple of weeks. So yes, I have to walk the razor's edge, then the tightrope. I will not walk the tightrope without a net under me anymore. And I cannot and will not, because it also affects people around me and myself and my own personal health. Will I do sessions where I am correcting some of these things? Absolutely, yes. That's the basis for some of the trench working I do. I will not stop doing that, nor will I stop cutting the heads off of stuff and stuff like that. I'm just more cautious. And I will always remove attachments from people when they're in sessions. I'll do the sessions like I always do them. Just these other bigger extracurricular activities have to either be really quick or not at all. And I have to stick to that. Because it was based on an old set of information where then I was not given either or given or shown the tools to do this properly, or I was lied to outright saying, "Oh, it's fine. You keep doing that. It's fine." It made my life and turned my life into living hell for a little while. So I'm a lot more cautious. I'm a lot more. I have a lot better perspective and perceptions on these things, and that makes it so that I can do what I'm hired to do much easier. And this is also one of the conversations that some forces out there didn't want me to say as well. So it was connected to some of that old information, and also from both SSP and from the Fall to the Lifting alike. So I wanted to make sure that that was put in there. So I believe, unless you have anything else to add, we are at the galactic portion of the show.
We are, and I just want to say right now that I'm hoping as you're listening to this that it's coming through okay, because it looks very choppy on what I'm seeing. So
It looks pretty crappy on the screen at the moment. So
started doing that because it did as soon as we started talking about those three letters that you know, the volume, the words are still there, and you know that the conversation still is had in an okay way. It's kind of hard for us to stop and restart at a different time. So
Yeah,
I'm just acknowledging that there's a chance that we know that the video
it's screwed up in some
is messed up a
fashion.
little bit right now.
And if it is, if I don't notice it in editing, and you saw some kind of glitch or something, put it in the comments below, and I will check it out.
Well, if it's a big one.
If it's a big one.
If it's small because you see the wavering or whatever, there's maybe not anything we're gonna be able to do about it. We're just acknowledging that we can see it here.
Yep.
And hoping it doesn't translate too bad, because we do want to have this conversation. And so we're going to maybe not have the best quality of video out with it, but it's the conversation that's important.
It's conversation. I know people see it's also slightly dimmer. It's because the sun's going down. We're not getting the light through the window here, and there's no light up here. We can actually make it brighter in here. So sorry about that. That's not part of what we're talking about. It's just when we started bringing up SSP stuff, it started going for a little bit. So, okay, I suppose, is this going to be Isaac again? We recorded two other things earlier today, and Isaac was the guy today. Is it going to be you again? Oh, you again? Okay, all right. He goes, you made a record. You have a three-fer. Oh, shut up. He goes, you did a three-way today. All right. Yeah, okay. All right. Let's see. Okay, it's less strenuous than it was, I will say, when we were doing the other two. There has been some mind wiping a little bit, but not like when we were doing the GIC recordings earlier. So from the day of this recording. So okay, Isaac. Yes, I'll shut up. Okay. What do you mean? Don't make this a habit. You know what I mean? Okay. Three's the limit. All right. Okay, through the crystal, not my brain, please. Only Isaac, whoever else is here, stop it. Benevolent Isaac only, or true benevolence. Okay, here we go. Yes, here we are. We've come full circle with this conversation. This is a conversation I personally was hoping would take place. This is something that needed and needs to be said. This was something that needed to be done. This is why this download came in so strongly, even with the other objections to other things that he did not mention with either sessions or other people's points of view. It's irrelevant, but not irrelevant. The reason it's irrelevant is because you need to focus on you, yes, learn from these things, yes, but it is relevant because of the fact that these things were learned. Now, in situations where people have been badly injured, could, again, as he was saying in private, could some of these things have been averted? Yes and no. Yes, were promises made by different beings, as you said in the other recordings, should things have been averted? Yes. In all of these other situations, whereas in the sessions that were not mentioned, whereas he was shown and said, we showed one thing to him, and then something opposite occurred in some relationship type stuff, or even in both handler and SSP agent type of scenario. One simple answer to this, and this will seem unfair to himself. This level of deception on my part was intentional. One reason: there was a safety factor involved in it, that he was believing that he was correcting something 100% when he was not, and it was being drawn in to a loop. Another situation of much further back was someone that was actually a spy, and that I and the forest people had to cut the cord. Another one was more recent, that had to do with radio, and there was a dangerous situation where the cord had to be cut. All of these scenarios, or as the forest people like to say, the end result is acceptable and pleasing. Have I deceived before to be able to protect? Yes. But now that you look back, now that you see this was a situation or situations you did not need to be involved in. Now, in regards to the original topic, the book, yes, he was getting interlocked into the certain channeling agendas that are out there currently, including the one that he mentioned, that I would prefer that this would be the extent that it is mentioned, because it could draw both of you further into that narrative. But to plant a small seed in the conversation, it needed to be said to the extent that it was currently. Are there a lot of false downloads that come in out there? Absolutely. He's weighed the sea of the jumbled, convoluted clusterfuckery that is going on out there. From AI to telepathic manipulation, to cosmic agendas, to other alien agendas, and there are plenty. The book, did it kickstart not only to you two eventually meeting, but did it kickstart where he would learn from, even though albeit a false foundation that may have involved bits of convoluted and weirdly decoded memory fragments and false information? Yes. But would you now be able to deliver this message now, had this not occurred? Had these events not occurred, would you be able to say there was even a false foundation at all? Probably not. If you had not walked on the false foundation, you would not know what the real one felt like. And I know that sounds cliche to anybody listening currently, but it is still a truth. Sometimes these negative things can then push you quite violently into the area you're supposed to be. Overage aside, yes, there was overage involved, and also in some of your, let's just say, trips overseas that you have taken, and upstate that you have taken. Those events do not need to be rehashed past this point, because of the fact what was found as a result of looking into parts of this and the safety factor involved in some of these instances. If I say any more, it then drags you back in. Can it be talked about amongst yourselves? Yes, for points of comparison. And also in this generalized way to the public. But the book, did it have a purpose? But was there deception galore in it? Yes, and some of the scripts that he wrote, were there deception galore in it because he was a part of his mind was attempting to remember the secret space program. Other beings around him did not want this because it would put him in a position of power. But knowing now that he knew that some of them were trying to tip him into overdoing it, to take him out off of his mantle of power and throw him off the edge of it. Balance in all things, you see. Balance in all of these respects. Yes, it is important to access these things, but is it important to let them rule you? No. Yes, the memories that come forward, yes, are they supposed to? Was he supposed to encounter those memories with that other case too that I aforementioned? Absolutely so. That was 100% legit and real to the past. Do you let it rule your mind? No. Is it important to remember and become sovereign? Yes. But should you bulldoze like he did last year? Or as Torang Cowell was attempting to bulldoze through it in order to get past a massive amount of energies. Is it important to do that? No. This is why in one of the scenarios where some of his SSP memories were coming back, I disapproved of the Oversoul's tactics and made sure he knew as such, with a giant middle finger to his face. This was not necessary to put the Avatar through that hell. But in retrospect, did it propel to this balanced non-pendulum swing point? Yes, it did. So I'm open to questions.
Well, really, I don't really have too many really open questions because I think, again, you know, the conversation is about, again, a transparency and openness to understand in order to truly grow, just to have that genuine, authentic desire to know means there is going to be maybe some book knowledge, but a huge amount of experience to be able to garner that. And so, you know, I guess this is without shame, without blame, without guilt, because those are some of the things that if your ego is too easily bruised, okay, and you are susceptible to these other things at great, it's one thing to reflect back and to say, if I would have known better, I think I would have done differently. Well, you didn't know better, and now you've got the wisdom now to do differently as you move forward. But should you be beating yourself up with shame, blame, and guilt over the fact that, you know, again, you didn't know? Not if your intention was never that way. And that's something, again, that the reason we are willing to have these conversations is to try and let you know that this happens to everybody. Know yourself and know what your intention is. Have the desire to want to grow and to become better. You have those things and you put them in place. And guess what? You're going to fall. You're going to trip. You're going to fall down. You're going to do these little things. But the goal is you're going to get back up. And then you're going to, again, take that information. Again, is this now a secure foundation? And just keep trying to do the best you can in order to make your lives, and if you are in a more public arena, to try and put information out there, that information becomes better and better and more helpful as you move along, as you garner more wisdom. So any last words, Isaac? This is really the crux of this conversation.
Yes, and you've done both well with this. Aside from some of his side battling that he tends to do in this type of arena, but truth be told, it was put together quite well, and I have no further comments except for the fact that know when you're supposed to keep something in the present and when you're supposed to discard it, like you've been doing with the notebooks and such, and like what you've been doing with things of the past, things that represent those points in the past that are no longer required. I'm not saying get rid of history, remember, but just know that when it is harming you in some fashion, it can either A, be something trying to prevent you from seeing something that would make you more sovereign, or B, trying to strip your sovereignty from you. And he has experienced both with this exact same subject, not only the book, but the SSP knowledge as well. And so have you. It has been the same identical thing. And it has probably been the same identical thing for some of you out there. So I'm going to end this conversation at the moment, but just know that the reason this was easier to have this conversation versus the other ones earlier today is because this got kind of slipped under the radar because they felt it wasn't as important. But it is actually speaking greater volumes than basically shoving this information in people's faces and basically saying how badly people were deceived. It is showing examples of what that looks like and the change and the false foundation from which that change evolved. So thank you and blessings to everybody. Oh. It wasn't as cold that time, but normally I start to freeze. My left hand starts to freeze after a while, but yeah, it's not as cold this time. But yeah, it wasn't as much blowback, and there wasn't as much resistance to this as was per the other conversations. By the time you see this, you will have seen both Galactic Interstellar Council and a Galactic Interstellar Council after show that are both dated 11/19/22. The same as this video. So that is what he is referring to give context. So I think we're at a stage where we can give the affirmation of blessing if you want to do the.
So blessings again to everyone that is out there. We hope you found this conversation interesting. We hope you can feel the genuineness and authenticity that we actually are sending towards you, and understand that if you're growing and learning, and it comes sometimes with some heartfelt knocks, we understand, because, you know, we have fallen and we have had to get back up, and we can tell you with all true intent that you can do the same, and do it without shame, blame, or guilt. And just to understand that wisdom comes with living some of these experiences so that you may then share with others around you. So again, we hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we send great blessings and love to everyone out there. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Yes, and blessings to all of you, and hope you enjoyed this episode, and bye-bye, everybody. All right.
Okay, you may have seen those EVPs that I stuck at the end of this episode. And what is very fascinating about this is you can tell before the one that said, is the man voice that says, take off that shirt. You can just tell, you know, when I was muttering beforehand that it was not the same syllables or the same sound wave or the reflection of that sound wave. That's one of the things you have to look for in the paranormal research. And the other one, you can clearly see the woman was not Joanna's voice because she was not speaking, and it was not a sound lag that caused that. So any of you looking for the evidence encased in this, that is where you can look. And you can clearly see that it was not a reflection of our own voice sound waves, nor was it a backwards echo from further on. Now, some paranormal investigators will say, okay, this was someone's thought that was reflected in there. That's true as well. This was an entity, of course, ghost, of course, spirit, of course, but also military, AI, all those, as I've said before, alien. But some will say that it was someone's voice that they hadn't spoken yet, like it was a time anomaly of some kind, where you said it was your thought or voice from much further ahead, or it was an answer to a question that you were either thinking or that you hadn't asked yet, hadn't verbalized yet, and it went inverted through the looking glass and answered your question first. I've seen this with EVPs, where sometimes you'll see the answer much later. It won't be It won't be right after a question, or it'll be before. The thing of it is, though, those were not necessarily comments based on this episode. Maybe the slow down thing, maybe because thoughts go through my head enough and somebody was saying slow down. Yeah, but to take off that shirt, I could see somebody being mad about that shirt. That was the Galactic Interstellar Council shirt that I was wearing. It said live in your creative passion on the front. And also with the GIC logo on the back. When I have perfected those enough, I will make those for sale. But I was wearing one. The GIC logo seemed to protect the back of the neck. That's where it was just above the neck, right as where the shoulders meet the neck. I'm not going to take a picture of it right now until I've got it more down pat. But it seems to be functioning. So I wanted to, on a magical level, that is. So I could see how those would be kind of inclusive of what we were doing. Somebody was mad about the shirt, and somebody was maybe saying, slow my thoughts down. I could kind of see that, but was it inclusive of the episode material? Not really. But I wanted to include that and this dissertation or this assessment or assertion of what was going on. So, and have I been speeding myself up with some of the ZOA drinks and stuff like that to work, to be able to do what I do? Yeah, maybe that's in reference to speeding myself up, but that's all natural materials and it's not really harmful. So I can actually see, though, where somebody was saying that I was speeding up the thoughts, getting faster downloads, things of that nature. So I can kind of see that part. And maybe I analyze things a lot and don't slow down. Yeah, and it's important to do that. It's important to slow down and recenter. So I can actually see it in a little bit of relation to the material, but still it by itself, it's independent and can stand alone too. So I'm not sure who the female voice nor the male voice was. They sound familiar to me. If I ever find out, I'll put it in the either in the comments or in the description below the video. So it is 9:01 a.m. Arizona Standard Time, Friday, December 2nd, 2022. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to add this to the end of the show you just saw. And this is going to be an unpopular thing to say. You know, this adds on to the whole cool kids assessment. What was being spoken of by Isaac and them. You know, and this is why we stay away from this. You know, there's always, you know, an expert in this field, and there really isn't one. There's experiencers, people that have gone through it, but there really aren't any vetters. No legitimate ones. You can't be part of the prove it crowd because of the fact that this is something that can't be proven, except for some earthly places that when you start to remember, you start to point them out. A lot of my stuff's either been in space or the earthly stuff has been redacted or hidden, or the neighborhoods that some things occurred in either got plowed over, or celebrities or regular folk are living in them, or something's got some filled in with concrete or plastered over. You know, there's really no way I could prove that unless I went right to it and busted a wall down and found a satanic temple somewhere. I can pinpoint neighborhoods, you know, because I began to remember things about a place that I've never been, but yet I have. But that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that, like, say you have a community going, yeah, that's right, yeah, that sounds correct to me. How would you know again? And why are you the vetter? You know, you're just a bunch of experiencers that went through the same phenomenon as all the rest of us. The only reason is some of them are getting marching orders from somebody else saying, okay, approve that one, don't approve this other one. That's basically all it is. Defame this one, fame this one, or otherwise known as the champions that have become the cool kids or Smoker's Corner. So I just wanted to put that out there because there's no such thing. At least in my opinion, from what I've seen, there's no such thing as the go-to community. There should be at least a legitimate version, but there is nobody that really can be trusted to say, yeah, this is the legitimate article, because each and every individual had each and every individual experience. They had their own experience. Yeah, there are fakes out there. There are frauds. There are insiders that are frauds, and there's insiders that are legit. But here's the thing. There is no system of vetting. There's no legitimate system of vetting, except the word of another person. That's just like during the COVID thing. The way that got vetted was very much in the same process. Think about this. You had some high mucky-muck doctor or scientist going, oh yeah, this is deadly. Yeah, this is deadly. Really? Oh yeah, this is the worst thing the planet's ever seen. And then other people believed them because they had clout and prestige and they had a position. But a lot of them were lying through their teeth. So think about that. It's the same process for the SSP stuff. This is why we're steering clear of that crowd, because some person with clout, prestige, and recognizable ability in the public eye, didn't matter if they're a fraud or not, could just say to the public and go, yeah, no, we've never heard of that person. And you'd be fucked at that point. So the same goes for when they choose to rise to the ascendance of champion or cool kid, to hang out on Smoker's Corner with them. Like, yeah, we like that guy. Yeah, that's really all it takes, guys. With this, to be in the cool kids is just like in high school. We like that guy. We hate that guy. It's the same thing. So that may be an unpopular response, but this has been our experience. So not bashing anybody legitimate that actually is out there, but there are so many more that have been cast aside by insiders and those part of the cool kids that just plain don't want to recognize them. And either they go unsung in that community and suffer in silence, or they're alien abductees that aren't legit. But the ones that are the legitimate SSP, along with alien and all that, they suffer in silence because they were told by some insider somewhere that they weren't legit, or they had to prove it. How can you prove something that was in space? You can't. And if something's been redacted, or if a general or something somewhere is saying, no, just say this person isn't legit, the other people come out on TV somewhere and say, or internet, and say, no, they're not legit, they're fraud. You're fucked at that point. So it's best to steer clear of that crowd and just kind of do your own thing and talk about it. But not everything is SSP, like I said before. Sometimes you're made to believe that it is. Then there's a pre-programmed person that was put in some kind of NK Ultra program to believe it. And then there's the legitimate ones that aren't validated somewhere because they feel they have to be validated. You really don't. But you also feel like somebody feels they have to be vetted, which they really don't either. Now, there's some things to vet, like whether somebody is legit or not, or like the beings that come through. That I have to vet those all the time. I'm very anal retentive about that, OCD about that. Not quite OCD, but you get the idea. But in this type of thing, there's really no way you can do that now with beings and etherics. You can feel whether it is or it isn't. If it doesn't feel right, it isn't. If it feels right, it is. It's as simple as that. That's intuition. With the other thing, it is intuition too, but don't think that you have to have the cool kids validate you. You are you. If you had your experience, talk about it. And make sure that you weren't just made to believe it by some alien source. And it may be hard to decipher. But if you want to talk about it, do it. But don't get sucked into it, and don't think you need vindication by the government and by the general public and by the cool kids, because you won't get it. Write about it, talk about it, leave it at that. Just like what I've been doing. I'm writing a book about it, and that's exactly where I'm going to leave it. So I will end this here. It is 10:16 p.m. Arizona Standard Time, Saturday, November 19th, 2022. Thank you. Okay, this is something that not many people know about. And I'm going to bleep the name. I'm going to say it for this record, but I'm going to bleep the name for this show. I'm attaching it to the one you just saw about from the fall of the lifting. And this is actually about as appropriate as you can get to the topic. Years ago, and nobody knows this story, years ago, and I have really no way of proving this, by the way. This is just something that happened in my life. I was living on Fletcher Avenue, Links at Lincoln, when we were just before we moved to Arizona. After we moved out of my grandmother's house, after she went into assisted living, she had Alzheimer's. We had to move out. We moved into the apartment. You hear me talk about Fletcher Avenue. It's the apartment at Links at Lincoln. I had a phone call happen one day, and this was a person that's fairly famous. And you know, she went under a different name then. And this is while she was still doing her cards and books and before she converted to Christianity completely and discounted psychics and started bashing psychic readings and stuff like that and thinking it evil. Kind of no different than Houdini if he were Christian and female. But, you know, it's kind of along those lines. But anyway. But only he, from communications with him, he's actually better in spirit. But anyway, this happened one day where I got this phone call, and this person wanted me to validate channelings she was doing. Very excited about it. And I started, vetting it a little bit. She wanted a vetting of it done by somebody that she didn't know. How she got and picked my information. I know how she got my information. It was online. Why she picked me, I don't know. And it's a mystery to this day. But she started reading stuff in her books that I knew were not right. And I had to poo-poo some of it. I said, no, this doesn't feel right. And I know it isn't. And she started sobbing and crying. And next thing I know, she's on TV going, oh my God, I'm so sorry. You know, she's on the internet going, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I got to get rid of all my cards and all my books. Dumb move. What you do is you reevaluate the information. You continue from there. You don't convert to Christianity. And you continue from there with your psychic abilities and psychic reads and tarot reads. And you just alter the information. You redact some and you keep going with others, like what I've been doing. I correct and I keep going. What happened was she redacted all of her cards and books and got rid of them. And the energy on them became horrible. I own some of her oracle decks, like an angel deck and an Ascended Masters deck and everything, and several books. They had to go in that very burn can. I put the notebooks in. This was over a year ago. It's the same can. And white, now you know white has some horrible energy on it, but it was horrible. So I suggest anybody has any of her stuff, burn it. Just burn it. Books, cards alike. And that's a shame because I used them for many years. I used the Oracle decks and everything for many years. And, the Angel and Ascended Master deck, they were actually pretty decent. Then the energy got rotten. But, yeah, she went completely Christian and started poo-pooing psychic readers. And any of her other original fan base hates her guts now. So, yeah, unfortunately, I was the linchpin for that. But nobody knows this. Now you do. Just know I've had to bleep the name, but you know who it is that I've had to bleep. So this is actually something I've never told anybody. And this is appropriate to this episode I was just looking at Facebook earlier, saw her on Facebook, saw, her page and where she was bashing psychics and all this other stuff. And the thing of it is, I hit unfollow, and I basically blocked her. And there was this really weird leveling and clearing of the energies. It was subtle but powerful. And there was something in my own energy field that cleared as a result. It was more likely an entanglement that came about at that time that would have placed it sometime in, I want to say 2015, somewhere in there. 14, 15, actually no, 14, I would have still been on Hartley. It was sometime in 2015, early 15 probably. But that's what happened. And this is something that I'm telling the truth on. And it's one of the weirdest things that ever happened to me. But I ended up being the linchpin or the catalyst for her going a little nuts. And poo-pooing all the metaphysical stuff. Now, I get how some tarot card decks get really, really heavy, like what we explained before. But hers got super heavy, so if you have anything of hers, I would get rid of it. I know I bleeped the name. She probably won't care if I mention it. But the thing of it is, I can tell people in private sessions. So I will end this here. Just know that it was a really weird energy clearing. My blood pressure went up and down for a little bit, and then it was done. Even though I did a lot of channeling today for 3 shows, this was weird energy. Okay, I'm going to leave it here. It is 10:23 p.m. Arizona Standard Time, Saturday, November 19th, 2022. Thank you.